Daniel had been suspicious for months. Claire had grown distant. Long hours at work. Late-night texts she kept face down on the table. When she mentioned a girls' weekend at a cabin 3 hours outside the city, something in his gut twisted tight. She laughed when she told him about it. Too much. Like she was filling the silence with sound instead of truth. He asked who was going. She listed names of friends he hadn't heard in years. Names that sounded rehearsed. Friday afternoon, she packed her overnight bag. A sweater he'd never seen before. A perfume she hadn't worn in months. She kissed him before she left. Quick, almost distracted. Then she was gone. Daniel sat in the living room long after her taillights disappeared. The clock ticked. The house settled in the evening wind. And finally, at dusk, he grabbed his keys and followed. The highway turned to country roads, then to a narrow 2-lane that cut through thick forest. The sun was bleeding out behind the trees by the time he caught sight of her car ahead. He killed his headlights and hung back as she turned down a gravel driveway, marked only by a leaning mailbox. The cabin sat at the end, 2 stories of weathered wood with smoke curling from the chimney. Warm light glowed through the windows. Claire got out of the car with her overnight bag slung over one shoulder. The door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad shoulders, smiling in a way Daniel hadn't seen her smile back at him in years. She leaned in and kissed the man like she belonged there. Daniel sat frozen in the car, fingers gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. Every rational thought told him to turn around, go home, and never look back. But another thought, dark and sharp, told him to stay, to see everything. He waited in the trees after they went inside. The woods pressed close around the cabin, the lake a black mirror behind it. Something about the place felt wrong. The trees stood too still. The wind never touched the water. At midnight, the cabin lights went out. Daniel crept closer through the underbrush. The fireplace inside flickered orange across the windows. 2 shadows moved on the wall, Claire and the man laughing softly. Then Daniel saw it. Something standing at the edge of the trees, tall, still, facing the cabin. At first, he thought it was a trick of the branches, but then it stepped forward into the moonlight. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Another shape appeared behind it, then another. Daniel stumbled back, snapping a branch underfoot. The figures froze. Slowly, their heads turned toward the sound. Inside the cabin, Claire screamed. Shadows jerked violently across the walls. The front door slammed open. The man stumbled out, bleeding, eyes wide with terror. Something yanked him back inside so fast he didn't even have time to shout. The windows shattered one by one. Dark shapes poured through, moving wrong, bending wrong, too fast for the eye to follow. Daniel ran to the porch. For one frozen moment, he saw Claire at the window, face pale, hands bloody against the glass, mouth open in a scream he couldn't hear. Then the lights inside went out. By morning, the cabin stood silent. The cars were still there. The bags, coffee cups on the counter, but no people. Police found Daniel's footprints in the dirt, no one else's. Inside, deep scratches scored the walls nearly to the ceiling, as though something with claws had climbed. The case remains open. Locals say the cabin burns lights at night sometimes. Orange flickers in the windows, screams in the trees. But when anyone gets close, it's always empty. Kevin wasn't a jealous husband. At least that's what he told himself. Lily had always been independent, always kept parts of her life to herself. He never minded. Not until the second phone. She called it her work phone, said it was for clients, business contacts, but she never left it lying around. It was always face down on the counter, notifications muted, like it held secrets he didn't need to see. Saturday morning, Kevin woke early. Sunlight slid through the blinds, cutting pale lines across the kitchen table. That's when he saw it. the phone, sitting on the counter like it had been left behind in a hurry. Lily had gone to yoga, her regular class. She wouldn't be back for an hour. Kevin stared at the phone. His coffee grew cold while he sat there, telling himself not to touch it. He trusted his wife. Didn't he? Finally, he picked it up. No passcode. The messages scrolled endlessly. Somebody saved only as him. At first, harmless chatter, then late-night texts, then photos. Kevin felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. Lily wasn't just hiding something. She was meeting this man. Hotels, bars, places Kevin had never been with her. But then he noticed something odd. The man's face was never clear. Every photo caught him turning away, or blurred like the camera couldn't focus. In one picture, Lily leaned close, laughing at something he said. The man's head was tilted toward her, but his face wasn't right, too pale. Eyes lost in shadow. Kevin scrolled further back. The earliest messages were months old. The man never used his name, never talked about himself at all. Every text was about Lily, where she was, when she was coming back, when her husband would be gone. The newest message froze Kevin's blood. Him, tell your husband to stay home tonight, he shouldn't see me. Sent last night. Kevin dropped the phone on the counter. His hands were shaking. When Lily came home, she found him pale and silent at the table. She smiled. Too wide. Everything okay? She asked. He wanted to ask her about the messages, the pictures, but her smile stopped him. It looked wrong, like it didn't reach her eyes. That night she said she was tired. Went to bed early. Kevin sat in the living room for a long time, staring at the phone before finally following her. At midnight, the sound of the front door unlocking woke him. Soft, slow. The phone buzzed on the counter. A new message. Him. Almost there. Don't open the curtains. Kevin crept to the window anyway. Across the street under the flickering streetlight, a man stood watching the house. Tall, thin, head tilted like he could see through the walls. Another text came. Tell him to go back to bed. Kevin didn't move. The man didn't either. They stayed like that for hours. At dawn, Lily was gone. Her side of the bed cold. The front door unlocked. The last message on the phone read, him. She's with me now. When police searched the house, they found her car in the driveway. Her purse on the counter. Her shoes by the door. Like she'd just stepped out for a moment. But the only footprints in the yard were Kevin's. Mark had known for weeks. The late nights. The sudden laughter at texts she never explained. The way Anna started dressing up for work meetings that didn't show on her calendar. He wasn't a fool, but he didn't want to believe it until he saw it for himself. That Friday night, she said she was meeting a friend for dinner. She put on the red dress she hadn't worn in years, the one she used to wear only for him. Don't wait up, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 10 minutes after she left, Mark grabbed his keys. Rain slicked the roads as he followed her through the city. Headlights glared off wet pavement. She drove across town, past the restaurants, past the neighborhoods where lights glowed warm in the windows. Finally, she turned toward the industrial district where the streets were darker, emptier. She pulled into a cracked parking lot under a flickering neon sign. Bluebird Motel. The sign buzzed faintly, letters half burned out. The kind of place people didn't ask questions. Mark parked down the street, rain drumming on the roof of his car. Through the blur of the windshield, he saw her get out holding her overnight bag. A man stepped out from under the awning to meet her. Tall, thin, long coat pulled tight around him. But something about the way he moved made Mark's skin crawl. His steps were too smooth, like his feet barely touched the ground. Anna smiled at him like she used to smile at Mark years ago. The man didn't smile back. He only turned toward the last room in the row, its single light buzzing overhead. Mark waited until they went inside. Then he crept closer, footsteps splashing softly in the puddles. The curtain was open just enough for him to see inside. Anna sat on the bed, laughing softly at something the man whispered. But the man stood perfectly still, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Mark raised his phone to take a photo. Through the lens, the mirror above the bed showed the man's reflection. Mark's breath caught in his throat. The face was wrong. Skin too pale, mouth stretched too wide. Eyes like black pits staring straight into the camera, even though the man's body hadn't turned. Anna followed his gaze toward the mirror, then toward the window, toward Mark. The man turned slowly. The lights flickered. Anna stood looking between them, confused. The man reached for her hand. His fingers looked too long. Mark stumbled back from the window. The door creaked open behind him. Anna stepped out first, rain dripping from her hair, face pale. She said nothing. The man followed. He didn't blink, didn't look away from Mark. His movements were too slow, too deliberate. "Anna," Mark whispered, but she only shook her head, eyes wide with something he'd never seen before, fear. The man took a step toward Mark, then another. Each footfall too soft, like it barely touched the ground. Mark ran. He didn't stop until he reached his car, heart pounding in his ears. When he looked back, the parking lot was empty. The motel door hung open, its light buzzing faintly inside. Police found his car abandoned the next morning, keys still in the ignition, door wide open. The motel manager swore no one had checked into that room in years. But sometimes on rainy nights, drivers passing by see the light in the last room flicker on, and a man stands in the window, watching the road. David had been planning it for months. 10 years of marriage. He wanted the night to feel like their beginning again. Candlelight, music, the ring she deserved this time, not the cheap one he could afford back then. He even booked the same restaurant where they'd celebrated their first anniversary years ago. Sarah thought he was working late. He let her think that. The plan was simple. He'd get there early, set the flowers on the table, wait with the new ring in his pocket. She'd walk in, surprised, maybe tear up a little when she saw him. They'd laugh about old times, drink wine, share dessert like they used to. The night came cold and drizzly. David arrived an hour early. The restaurant was half empty. Low music, soft conversations. The kind of place where even the waiters seemed to move slowly so as not to break the mood. He chose the table by the window, the one with the best view of the rainy street outside, the streetlights glowing yellow in the puddles. The waiter brought water. David set the flowers carefully in the center, adjusted the cutlery twice, rehearsed the words he was going to say when she walked in. He checked the ring box again. A simple gold band. Perfect. Then Sarah walked in. She wasn't alone. The man with her was tall, well-dressed, hand at the small of her back the way David used to do. They laughed softly together as they crossed the room. They didn't see him. They sat in the corner booth. The same booth David had reserved 10 years ago for their anniversary dinner. David sat frozen in his chair. The flowers between his hands felt ridiculous now. The ring in his pocket felt heavier than stone. He stared at them while they ordered wine, their heads close together, her smile the kind she hadn't given David in years. Then the lights went out. Not just dimmed, gone. The entire restaurant dropped into darkness thick enough that David couldn't see the table in front of him. People gasped. A glass shattered. Somewhere, a chair toppled over. When the lights flickered back, the room was empty. Every table, every chair, empty, except David's, and the one in the corner booth. Sarah and the man sat frozen, faces pale, staring at the window. David turned slowly. Outside, through the rain-streaked glass, something stood under the streetlight. tall, thin, unmoving. The lights flickered again. Now the figure was at the window, face, if it had a face, tilted against the glass as though peering in. Too tall to be human. The lights went out completely. Chairs scraped in the dark. A low breath sounded inches from David's ear. When the lights came back, Sarah and the man were gone. Only wet footprints trailed from the corner booth to the door. David ran outside into the drizzle. The street was empty. But far down the block, three shapes moved slowly together. Sarah, the man, and something much taller walking behind them. The next morning, police found the restaurant unlocked. Tables still set for dinner. Candles burned down to puddles of wax. Chairs perfectly in place, but no staff. No customers. No one at all. Some nights people walking past say they see candles flickering inside, tables filled with shadowy diners. But no one ever sees them leave. Emma thought the lake house trip was Mark's idea of repairing what had broken between them. The arguments, the late nights at work, the way he'd started turning his phone face down when she walked into the room. So when he suggested a full week away, no phones, no work, no distractions, she agreed immediately. Maybe, she thought, this was how they found each other again. The lake house was beautiful in the way old places often are. Tall pines crowding the shoreline, long wraparound porch with peeling paint, windows looking out over the black mirror of the lake. It felt isolated, peaceful, too peaceful. On the first night, Mark cooked dinner while Emma unpacked. They ate on the porch, the sky turning violet above the still water. She almost felt like things were okay again. Almost. But as she gathered plates, she noticed it. A faint light across the lake. A lantern, maybe, swinging slowly through the trees on the far side. She mentioned it to Mark. He didn't even look up from his drink. Probably a camper, he said, voice flat. The second night, Emma woke to the sound of the back door creaking open. Mark wasn't in bed. She found him on the dock, barefoot, staring across the lake. The lantern burned on the far side, brighter now, closer to the water. When she asked what he was doing, he said nothing. Just kept staring like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. The third night, Mark was different. Quiet at dinner, snapping at small things. Kept looking toward the lake like he was waiting for it to speak. Emma stayed awake after he went to bed. At midnight, the back door opened again. She followed him this time. The night was perfectly still. No wind, no crickets, just the soft splash of water against the dock as Mark stepped outside. The lantern glowed at the edge of the trees across the water, and this time Emma saw someone holding it. A tall figure, standing completely still at the shoreline, head tilted toward them. Mark whispered something Emma couldn't hear. The figure raised the lantern slightly, like a signal. Mark stepped into the small rowboat tied to the dock. Emma ran toward him, shouting. Mark froze halfway across the lake, oars dripping in his hands. The lantern on the far shore went out. Silence dropped over the lake like a curtain. Emma called his name until her throat hurt. But the boat drifted empty toward the far bank. They found it the next morning, stuck in the reeds. No sign of Mark. That night, Emma sat alone in the cabin, hands shaking as she locked every door. At midnight, a lantern appeared on the dock outside, swinging slowly, closer than before. The next day, police dragged the lake. Found nothing. On the fifth night, Emma left before dark. Locals told her no one camps on the far side. No one lives there. Not anymore. But some nights, they said, a lantern burns in the trees across the water, waiting. Jason was a light sleeper. Always had been. So when the sound of the front door unlocking woke him at exactly 12:17 a.m., it wasn't subtle. The click of the deadbolt. The soft creak of the hinges. Too careful. like whoever was opening it didn't want to be heard. He sat up in bed, heart thudding, eyes adjusting to the moonlight spilling through the curtains. Rachel wasn't beside him. Her side of the bed was empty, the blanket folded back neatly like she had planned to leave it that way. Jason crept through the hallway, careful not to step on the boards that creaked. At the end, by the faint glow of the porch light, Rachel stood just inside the open door. Her hair was damp with mist, her coat zipped to the neck, shoes wet enough to leave small dark footprints on the tile. She jumped when she saw him. "You scared me," she whispered. "Where were you?" Jason asked. Rachel hesitated, then smiled, too quickly, too practiced. Couldn't sleep, just wanted some air, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. And Jason noticed her shoes were muddy. She went to bed like nothing happened. Jason didn't sleep at all. The next night, he stayed awake on purpose. At 12:17 a.m., Rachel slipped out again. Same careful footsteps, same soft click of the door. This time, Jason followed. She walked through the sleeping neighborhood, her steps quick but steady. The fog hung low over the streets, blurring the glow of the streetlights into pale halos. She didn't look back, didn't pause. Even when the houses ended and the trees began, the woods at the edge of town were blacker than the night sky. Branches tangled overhead, swallowing the moonlight whole. Jason stayed far enough back to keep her in sight, but not close enough for her to hear him. The only sounds were his own breathing and the occasional snap of twigs underfoot. Rachel reached a clearing near the center of the woods, and that's where Jason saw him. A man stood there, too tall, too thin, perfectly still in the mist. Rachel walked right up to him. She didn't say hello, didn't ask who he was, just handed him something small. It glinted faintly in the moonlight. Metal, maybe a key. Jason froze behind a tree, barely breathing. The man didn't move at first, didn't speak, didn't even nod. Rachel whispered something Jason couldn't hear. Then she turned like she was about to leave. That's when Jason stepped on a branch. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Rachel spun toward him, eyes wide. But the man turned slowly, too slowly, like his neck wasn't built for the motion. That's when Jason saw his face, or rather what should have been a face. It was smooth, blank, skin stretched tight over where eyes and mouth should have been, like a wax mask left too close to a fire. Jason stumbled backward, heart hammering, breath loud in his ears. The man started walking toward him. Not fast, not running, just steady, silent steps that didn't crunch the leaves or break the twigs beneath them. Rachel called Jason's name, but it sounded faint now. Wrong somehow. The man's head tilted to one side as he closed the distance, like he was studying Jason. Jason ran. Branches tore at his arms, mud slid under his shoes. The trees blurred as he crashed through the undergrowth. Behind him, he could hear footsteps. Slow, measured, never hurrying. Jason didn't stop until he reached the house. The porch light swung wildly in the wind, the door banging softly against the frame. Inside, the house was silent, too silent. Rachel wasn't home. The next day, police searched the woods. They found no footprints except Jason's. No signs of Rachel. No signs of anyone at all. That night, Jason locked every door, every window, sat in the kitchen with every light on. At exactly 12:17 a.m., the front door unlocked by itself. The knob turned slowly. Wet footprints began appearing on the hallway floor, one by one, leading toward the bedroom. The next night, it happened again. And the next. By the seventh night, Jason heard breathing outside the bedroom door. Low, slow, just beyond the thin wood. He didn't open it. Not that night. Not ever. Michael had gone over the words in his head all day. The speech. The tone. The exact way he would hand Rachel the envelope. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want tears. He just wanted it over. The drive home was longer than usual, not because of traffic, because he kept taking the wrong turns, second-guessing himself, circling blocks he knew by heart as though delaying what waited at the end. The divorce papers sat on the passenger seat like they carried a weight far heavier than paper should. Rachel had been different for months now. At first, it was small things, late nights, quiet dinners, the way she'd keep her phone face down on the table when it buzzed. Then the smiles stopped feeling real. The conversations grew shorter. The house felt cold even when it wasn't. He told himself he was imagining it until he wasn't. The lawyer had asked if he was sure. Michael said yes before he had time to think. Before he had time to picture this exact drive, this envelope, this night. The sun was gone when he pulled into the driveway. The house glowed softly through the curtains, warm against the gathering dark, like nothing inside could possibly be wrong. But as soon as Michael stepped onto the porch, something felt off. The air was heavy. Still, no crickets, no wind. Just a strange, waiting silence. He pushed the door open. The house was bright inside, every lamp burning like a stage set. Rachel stood in the center of the living room, perfectly still on the rug, head tilted back, staring at the ceiling as though something was written there in invisible ink. Rachel. His voice sounded small in the light. She didn't move. Michael stepped closer, envelope in hand. "Rachel, we need to talk." Slowly she turned toward him. Her face was pale, drawn, like she hadn't slept in days. But when she smiled, it was too wide, like her mouth didn't want to stop. "Did you bring them?" she asked softly. Her voice was low, shaky. "The papers?" He lifted the envelope halfway, confused. Rachel nodded once, then again, too slowly. Michael handed them over. Her fingers were ice cold when they touched his. She didn't open the envelope, didn't even look at it, just held it in both hands like something sacred. Then she laughed. Low, uneven. Michael froze. Something shifted in the shadows near the far wall. At first he thought it was a curtain moving, but the window was shut. The air wasn't moving at all. The thing in the corner was too tall, too thin, perfectly still. The light from the lamps didn't seem to touch it. Rachel's eyes flicked toward the darkness. Her smile stretched wider. "You came back," she whispered. Not to Michael, to it. The figure stepped closer. The shadows clung to it like oil, sliding along the floor as it moved. Michael stepped back toward the door. Rachel dropped the envelope. It hit the rug softly, landing between them. The thing stopped moving. Rachel kept smiling, lips trembling like the effort hurt her. "Do you see him?" she asked, voice breaking. Michael didn't answer. He couldn't. In the hallway mirror, he saw the reflection. Closer now, behind Rachel. But when he turned, the space was empty. The lights flickered. Twice. Rachel stepped backward toward the shadowed corner, whispering something Michael couldn't hear. Her words came out broken, shaking. "He says we have to sign." The figure moved again. Faster this time. The shadows stretched up the walls as it passed. Michael bolted. The door slammed behind him. The last thing he saw through the window was Rachel standing in the center of the rug again, staring at the ceiling. The envelope clutched against her chest like it was keeping her alive. When police searched the house the next morning, the lights were still on. The papers were on the floor, smeared with something dark. No sign of Rachel, no sign of Michael. But neighbors swore they saw someone tall moving through the living room after midnight. Someone who wasn't either of them. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well. if you can.